Hey everybody, welcome to Vegas Weekly 2.0 for Saturday, July 17th, 2021. Today, some comp myths that we will explode. We will talk about what I think is one of the most overlooked and nicest resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. We'll answer one of your key questions from the Facebook group, and we'll bring you up to date on what's going on in Las Vegas. Stay tuned. Okay, it's going to be a short news segment today, and we're going to talk about a not so pleasant subject again, a problem that is flaring up once again throughout the country, and Las Vegas is not immune, no pun intended. COVID-19 cases have been on the rise, and not just cases, but hospitalizations and even deaths in the Nevada area. Doctors and other public health officials in Southern Nevada are recommending that people, vaccinated or unvaccinated, wear masks in crowded indoor spaces. It's certainly an about face from the free-for-all we have seen since most all of those requirements were dropped, 6 or 8 weeks ago now? It's been long. Seems like it's been a long time. Of course, there is a tendency from everyone, I think, myself included, to kind of go, oh, now we don't have to think about this anymore. But apparently we're going to have to continue to think about this. What some observers have called a pandemic of the unvaccinated has, in many cases, come back to bite even those of us who've gotten jabbed in the arm a couple of times. A number of individuals in Las Vegas who were vaccinated have come down with the virus. And I know of several personal friends of mine who, despite having been vaccinated, tested positive within the last month or so. Now, in each of those cases, the person had a fairly mild case and recovered fairly quickly, but nonetheless, the risk is still there for most all of us, and it's certainly there for folks that have not been vaccinated. And I suspect one of the reasons for this advisory, and it is so far just an advisory, it's not mandated, is simply the fact that a lot of people who aren't vaccinated are not wearing masks. There's no real way to sort of, no public facility is going to require you to present some sort of form, some sort of proof of vaccination before they allow you to walk in without a mask. And so, well, there you go. But that's what's on hand. Officials are doing their best to try to get more people vaccinated, but there seems to be a ceiling on the number of people that are willing to do it right now or at all. But there have been a number of sort of public sort of pop-up vaccination clinics that have emerged, including one that's supposed to take place today around the Park MGM area. And many of these events offer great prizes. So if you happen to be watching this, you're in Las Vegas, you need to get your shot, hey, free of charge, no ID required, nothing of the sort, no insurance. So drop on by, and there'll probably be food and beverage, and there's big prizes. So there you go. That's our news for the day. We'll be back in just one moment with some tips on comps, because we can. Okay, so we're back on our continuing series, which is probably going to go on for at least a few more weeks, where we're talking about comps, because it's a topic that people are interested in and one which a lot of people are kind of mystified by. We've talked in the past month on a couple of occasions about what I think genuinely you could call a trick for how to get a bit more perhaps from the casinos in terms of free or discounted stuff than perhaps you deserve. It has been pointed out to me by a number of people, and quite rightly so, that these tricks are probably only going to work once. If you, for example, play a great deal at a casino where you are not staying on a single day and make it look like you're a big-time player, and then they offer you a free room and some other perks for 2, 3, 4 nights, and you go stay there, and then you revert to being the player that you actually are, guess what? It's not gonna, and you can't turn around and then, pull the same thing again. I mean, maybe you could in 5 years if you haven't been in the resort, but in general, those initial, what are often called teaser offers, will indeed go away. And keep in mind that once you're staying at a property, that whole concentrating play thing doesn't work because they know you're there. So if you play all your play is on one day and you don't play it all the other days, it's still going to count against you. So keep that in mind. Sure, if you're a new player, you can take advantage of some of these things. But, in the end, it's going to come down to the ADT, your average daily theoretical. The amount of money the casino thinks you're going to lose is the number that they're going to use in terms of giving something back to you. And again, what that exact number, I've heard numbers as low as 20%, as high as 50%, and I imagine it varies between properties. And obviously, if you have a casino host, which is a nice thing to have, we'll talk about that in just a minute. They can probably answer some of these questions for you and give you a better idea of what your play is worth. So there you go. All right, so a couple of myths about casinos and about casino play that we want to explode. One of which is that somehow if you use your player's card, the casino knows this, does know this, and somehow magically they adjust the machines so that you do not get as much play for your money. It's like, there's this theory that somewhere in the back room somewhere is tightening the machine so that it won't pay out, and that they do this all the time. Sometimes they do it at different times of the day. If it's going to be really busy, they tighten the machine because they know they can get away with it. And then maybe in the wee hours of the morning, they'll loosen the machine. And then if they see you put a card in, somebody tightens the machine. If they see you take it out, they loosen the machine. It doesn't work that way. Yes, you can change the payout percentages on a machine, but in most cases, it requires some regulatory approval. You have to submit the information to the gaming control and say, this is what we're doing. We're changing this to this. And it's not some guy in the back pushing a button or tightening the machine. That's my new thing. I want to just keep tightening the machine. No beer today. We have iced coffee. It's very hot, just like it is in Vegas. So anyway, don't fall for that myth. And even if there seems to be anecdotal evidence that that's how it works, it's not true. Okay. The second thing is that you have to be a high roller to have a host. Guess what? I had a host. Now, let's be realistic. First off, being assigned a host is a little bit the casino's way to make you feel like you're incredibly valuable to them. And most hosts that people have are kind of these, liaisons, people you can reach out to and talk to. But for the average player, you're not going to get a whole lot more having a host versus not having a host. It doesn't mean your offers are necessarily going to be better or worse. In most cases, you can probably book the same offer yourself as the host can book for you. They may be able to smooth out some bumpy edges. I mean, there are properties that require you to have a certain number of days in between stays. And I used my host to get around that. There were some offers that I couldn't figure out how to book myself, and the host was able to add that free play offer in this case, and I think it was probably some kind of a food and beverage comp as well, and they were able to add that on to my reservation. I couldn't do that manually. So there are things like that these sort of lower end hosts can do for you, but just because you have a host doesn't mean that oh my God, I'm going to get all this stuff from the casino. And I've had people say, yeah, I have a host, but most of the time it's almost easier to just go ahead and book things myself, particularly online now. So, and in most cases, if you want to speak to a host at a casino, talk about your level of play, so forth, there's usually a host sort of on duty that at least during the business part of the day, who would be willing to talk to you if they're available and give you a little bit of an idea about what your play is worth at that property. So there you go. A few things more about comps, and we'll continue to cover that in the weeks to come. we come back here in just a moment, I'm going to talk about one of the most underrated and overlooked resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back from a slightly different angle. I'm moving the camera around between segments just to kind of freak everybody out. Because I watch YouTube videos and like every 3 seconds, someone like moves the camera slightly away. I don't really know what that's supposed to accomplish, but it's kind of a YouTube meme. So I guess my version of that will be to change the angle slightly. Look at this hair. Can't beat hair like this. All right, so we're going to be doing a feature, probably most weeks, where I'm just going to focus in on a particular resort, preferably one that I have stayed at and am fairly familiar with, and give you my impressions of it. And we're going to start out today with a hotel that a lot of people seem to take a pass on. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why I think that is. But it is the Wynn Las Vegas. Built in the mid-2000s over the corpse of the Desert Inn. It was the sort of final masterwork of Steve Wynn, and of course bears his name after building up the Golden Nugget downtown, and then the Mirage and Treasure Island and Bellagio. The Wynn was sort of the final piece of the puzzle. Like those properties in general, it is an extremely good hotel. It is not cheap. It is not particularly convenient, and I think that's why a number of people sort of take a pass on it. I've spoken to friends in recent memory who said, no, I've never actually been to the Wynn. Maybe it's a kind of generational thing. When I first started going to Vegas back in the 1990s and then into the early 2000s, certainly, it seemed like every time you went, there was a couple of new hotels. So you always sort of took that walkthrough of the new properties. And initially, Wynn had a little bit of a, obviously you wanted to check it out because it was the new Steve Wynn property. There were some interesting little quirks about it, including the, at that time they had a real Porsche dealership inside the Wynn with a little gift shop, and you could, I guess if you could prove that you weren't, that you could theoretically buy a Porsche there. I don't know that anybody ever did. It was sort of the latest sort of super premium buffet. I'll admit after the first few years that it was open, it became kind of a pass for me as well because of the location. And it's not just because it's a little bit out there, for me anyway. Like Venetian Palazzo, its neighbor to the immediate south, was also never a property I was particularly keen on playing at. There wasn't certainly very much to the north after the Stardust and Riviera closed down. Now that's changed a little bit now because it's not really much of a hike from particularly on the Encore, the sort of sister property of the Wynn, to walk over to Resorts World. But of all the hotels that I've stayed at on the Las Vegas Strip, I would say that this is the one that's, I think, best run, that has the best customer service. That it's solidly put together. I mean, if you've seen any of my room videos from the times I've stayed at the Wynn, the rooms aren't necessarily the fanciest in town or necessarily the sort of the most bells and whistles. But in the case of, the Wynn, they're like 15 years old and they still are meticulously maintained. And I would say that for most all of the public areas as well on the property. I enjoy the casino. There are those who don't. Obviously, if you play table games, you're going to be looking at pretty high limits. But you can certainly sit down and play penny slots or quarter video poker just as easily at the Wynn as you can at a lot of other properties. I've generally found the drink service there to be good and frequent in most cases. So to me, it's just a very comfortable place. I will likely stay there again on my next trip because I've actually received some offers from them outside of the Wynn Slots app, which we may talk about that one of these days. The Wynn Slots app is just keeps getting less and less appealing. But again, I've had good room offers for my level of play, and I know a number of people who tier match to the Wynn, something you can do through the end of August if you, I think, like if you're at least platinum level with Caesars. I'm not sure what the level you need to be at with M Life, maybe gold. Someone can let me know in the comments below if you'd like to do that. But yeah, I mean, it maybe isn't for everybody. Like I said, it is a little bit isolated, but at this point, with a lot of people really interested in Resorts World and spending some time in that new property, it's pretty well located with respect to that. You've also got a couple of very sort of prominent go-to restaurants nearby in the Peppermill and Tacos El Gordo. Those are very close to Encore. And certainly if you're into the nightlife scene or the pool scene, Wynn and Encore can certainly hook you up there. So, you know, if you haven't even been there, and that's what I've heard from a number of people that, no, I've never even bothered to go there. Check it out sometime. You know, just set it, chill. You know, I said, it's just a fun place to hang out. I find it a relaxing place. And again, a high level of customer service. The big drawback, even more so than the location, is the fact that as far as food and beverage, everything in the place is expensive. You know, you're not getting out of pretty much any restaurant, even at the sort of lowest level, for less than $20, and that you're not going to get much for that. So, you know, it's somewhat less than you can run across the street to Fashion Show Mall or over to Palazzo, and there's food courts there where you can eat a little bit cheaper. But again, on property, you're hard pressed to find any good food and beverage deals. But if you're one of those people that's never been to the Wynn, go. It's quality property. And, you know, if you have the opportunity to stay there, I would definitely do so. There you go. All right, one last segment of our show. We're picking a question that was asked in the Facebook group this week, and I'm going to give my, hopefully, thoughtful answer. Okay, so we're back with the final segment of our show, and the very first segment in which we answer a question that was asked sometime in the past week in the Facebook group. And so for this week, let's go to this post from a gentleman named of John Rallis. I did not pick this person because his initials are JR, but here's the question that he asked just a day or so ago. All right, so you can see that John is curious about whether it's best to take Uber or Lyft from the airport to his hotel, or if he might as well just go with a cab. And certainly this question, I think, is probably prompted most by the price surges that we have seen for Uber and Lyft in recent months. Once Vegas started sort of ratcheting back up and there were more and more visitors, the rideshare drivers did not increase at the same pace. So it was sometimes difficult to get a ride from the airport. And when you did, it was sometimes frequently was using what's called surge pricing. One of the differences between a taxi and a rideshare, whether it be Uber or Lyft, is that when things are very busy, when there's a lot of demand, the prices go up, which makes sense in the sort of marketplace, which also not only discourages you from perhaps taking a rideshare, but it also would encourage those folks who drive to sort of get on the app and get out there because they have an opportunity to make more money. The other thing that has changed in the last couple of years is there is flat rate pricing to most any hotel on the Strip from the taxis. They've required to use that sort of flat rate. Now, it's not particularly cheap. It is posted. I think the sort of low end is around $19, you know, at the hotels around the Tropicana area, like, you know, MGM Grand or New York, going all the way up to the Strat, which I believe clocks in at like 29 bucks. When I took a cab to the Wynn, I believe I paid 27. So, you know, just kind of figure it's going to be in that $20 to $30 range for a cab, of course, not including tip. And so if you know that, you can see what the pricing is on the Lyft and Uber apps as well. They'll be happy to tell you what the current pricing is, what the wait time situation is. and you can better make a judgment at that point than right now. You'll have a better chance to decide what's the best choice once you're actually in Las Vegas. So, you know, and the other thing that does come into play there is taxis are, I would say, significantly more convenient and easier to access and more intuitive. Once you're in the baggage claim area, there's a clearly marked exit to the taxis. You get in a very well organized line that seesaws back and forth, and in no time you have a cab. Whereas the rideshare area is a little harder to sort of figure out, particularly if you're a first-time visitor. It's not difficult necessarily, but it's not quite as easy and intuitive, and the area itself can seem a little sort of disorganized. It's better than it was a few years ago, but it still can feel a little disorganized. So again, if the prices are similar and you want to get something fast and you don't want to try to mess around with dragging your luggage across to the parking garage, then maybe it's worth a couple extra dollars to take the cab. The reason I took the cab was because I simply could not raise a driver. And I sat there and it just never got a driver for me. So I ended up taking the cab. So there's no one right answer there, but if you're looking at a cab versus rideshare, those are some things that you should consider. Thank you, John, for that question, and we'll post this video in your as an answer to your post, and hopefully it was helpful. All right, so that wraps up our first edition here of what I'm calling Vegas 2.0. We'll come up with an actual title for next week's show. We will do something this Wednesday. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I think PJ is going to be back with some cocktail-related fun and excitement, and maybe we'll do a field trip this week if the weather if the weather cooperates. Yeah, as long as it doesn't rain or something like that. So anyway, we'll see you on Wednesday for that, and we'll be back again next Saturday with another episode of Vegas Weekly. Until then, I hope you have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.